Alright, welcome to another Autopsy Rants. We have some shit to talk about here. We gotta do another one of these longer form podcasts. First, I want to start off by saying I am very sorry about the audio from the last video that I did on the Liberty Loses in November video. I think I'm gonna just completely not do music underneath my my ranting here. I do like to do that. I used to do that all the time on videos on the Autopsy 87 channel. Though I do think it can be distracting. Sometimes when I'm doing the editing of it, it sounds way better than once it's actually mixed and like uploaded to YouTube. I don't know exactly how all that works. Maybe something with the compression, the way it gets balanced out or whatever. But yeah, it can be really distracting. It was especially bad on the last video that I did. I like to try to add some layers to what I call like the podcasting cake. You know, I don't do nearly as many visuals on these things as I would typically do on older videos. But I like to, I like to add some things. I like to add some spices and some sweetness here and some flavor there. But, sometimes it doesn't work out. You ever bake a cake where it ends up tasting like shit even though you thought it was going to be awesome? Well, it happens, guys. It happens, so bear with me. But we do have some shit to talk about here. The first thing that I wanted to talk about here, and don't worry, we're going to get to some more heavy-hitting stuff, but these DNC and RNC conventions, the Democrat National Convention that happened, I think it was 3 nights. I only watched a little bit of the quote-unquote highlights, if you call any of that highlights. And, of course, the RNC conventions are going on. I think they started yesterday. I think they're going to go on tonight and so forth. But they're really bizarre. And they're really bizarre because they are essentially pep rallies without a live audience. Now, you can't Zoom or live stream a pep rally. The whole point is, like, the building of the energy of the crowd. It's like watching, like these basketball players and these baseball players in the professional sport are playing to like completely empty stadiums. It really just, it comes off as bizarre, but at least those you understand, like the game can work for that. The thing about politics is it's all about cheerleading, at least for those kinds of conventions. It's all about connecting to the people, getting the roar of the crowd. And it's no wonder really that the people tuning in has dropped significantly since just last election. I mean, even people who otherwise gave, whatever political side that you're on, the people that gave pretty powerful speeches in the past just come off like they are in an empty room. It's just be like, President Obama being in an empty room talking. And the thing that makes it passionate and big and emotional and like powerful, which is the whole point of these pep rallies, is to get like the crowd applauding. To get like a lot of movement from the people, even though you're preaching to the choir quite literally because it's full of Democrats in that sense. But that was kind of like the whole purpose of it. The whole thing seems bizarre now, and it makes me hope even more that we're not only going to get the presidential debates, but that they're at least going to be in person. Like I can't imagine anybody giving a shit about presidential debates that are basically two fucking senile, old, crusty dudes talking to each other via like Skype or something. Like a goddamn Zoom meeting. Nobody's gonna tune in for that shit either. So like, at a certain level, what's the point of even having it? Though I do hope they have it. I do want to see a back and forth between Biden and Trump. And I think that's totally fair for, the voters and everybody in the country to see like, okay, well, we're down to these two dipshits. So I at least want to see them kind of scrap it out. But as far as the DNC and the RNC goes, it's just a matter of a varying degree which one of these parties is going to hurt the country the most at any given time. Both parties are grossly expanding the state. So both parties, by that sense, are essentially horrible for the country. Everything is just going to get worse in regards to state power, state expansion, the state fucking literally everything up. But I do want to talk real quickly about Joe Biden's new tax promise to the American people, and it's not like we've never heard this before, but Biden is saying that there will be no new taxes or no tax hikes for anyone making less than $400,000 a year, which is the vast majority of Americans. Now, there's some real issues with this. First off, Americans have heard before, read my lips, no new taxes. We've heard this shit before, and the taxes always end up coming. In this sense, that would be a violation of another campaign promise. For all I know, Joe Biden doesn't even know that he said that. Joe Biden might have meant 40,000. But it accidentally said 400,000. Who knows? That'll probably be when if he did become president and inevitably did raise taxes, which he would, and I think anybody with a fucking mind knows that he would, even part of the people that are voting for him. But when it would inevitably happen that he would raise taxes on people making less than $400,000 a year, he would, the campaign or him or some spokesman or whatever would come out and say, "Oh, well, he misspoke. He didn't mean 400,000. He meant 40,000, or he meant 100,000, or something like that." But either way, under Biden, the tax hikes are definitely going to happen. And here's a main reason. Because if he was not going to raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year, he would have to keep the Trump tax cuts, which he has already pledged to get rid of. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, Pew Research shows that 63% of Americans benefited directly from those tax cuts. Okay, significantly smaller percentages of Americans actually make more than $400,000 a year. And another point on this would be, how would you handle Biden's proposed spending increases, which he has already listed several of? How would you possibly fund those without the new taxes? Even if he did, that would lead to an even bigger problem with the Federal Reserve printing money. Like right now, the Federal Reserve creates about 60% of the money that the government spends. So that means 40%, only around 40% of the money the government spends actually comes from what they tax us for. And that is over $4 trillion that they steal out of the market every year. And that still only accounts for 40% of what our government spends. It's not an income problem. It's not a money problem. It is a spending problem. Now, at least the honest way to do that would be to raise people's taxes. But obviously, there is no fucking way they could raise taxes enough to cover the amount that they're spending. If you had to more than double everybody's taxes in the country and still be in a deficit, there's no way that that's going to happen. People will revolt at that point. But the Joe Biden's not going to raise taxes for anyone making less than $400,000 a year. That's obvious dog shit. There's no way that he's going to run on this unless he violates all the other things that he's already said. So yes, Joe Biden would be raising taxes on people making less than $400,000 a year. For any of you who might stumble across this video and be naive enough to think that that's a campaign promise that he will actually keep, you are naive. It's not going to happen. And obviously the real big news happening at the moment, the hot topic, quite literally because the cities are on fire, is the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And I know everybody's familiar with this. I caught a little bit of flack from this on Twitter because I had said in the video clip that was going around, it was maybe 30 seconds of video. And my initial thoughts in watching this is you have 4 cops there with guns drawn. This is where the video starts. Now, obviously, that matters. So, the video starts where you have 4 cops with guns drawn. Like, I don't see tasers. I don't hear anybody popping off a taser, anything like that. But they have guns drawn on this guy, and this guy is on the passenger side of the car right next to the cops. I mean, the cops are right beside him. And the man walks away as they're telling him to stop. Walks around the front of the car, walks over to the driver's side door, opens it up. Now the cops are following him over there. And the cop in front reaches up and grabs the guy's shirt, starts pulling it back. Then the next thing you know, he empties 7 rounds, point blank range, into this man's back. Okay, so my immediate thoughts on this, and this is what I posted, my immediate thoughts on this were that if 4 trained officers were worth a fuck at doing their job, it seems to me they could have detained this man long before it became necessary to put 7 rounds in his back to stop him. Now, I mean, I don't think that should be in any way controversial. Like, you were literally within arm's reach of this guy, and you let him, he didn't run around the front of the car, he walked around the front of the car. Like, seems to me, I don't know if tasers were deployed. Were they? I didn't see any tasers out. If tasers were deployed and they didn't work, then that does change some things. But we really, 4 of you can't detain this guy before he even gets to that point? That's one point. The other point would be that obviously the man did not comply. Now, does that warrant a death sentence? Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. It's not as straightforward as that. It's not as straightforward as, oh, you didn't listen to me, so we're going to shoot you. Once you get to the point where you're getting into a car, you have the door open, and you start reaching into the car, things become different for the officers, whether this is right or wrong. And by the way, a lot of libertarians, I think, have a problem with this. because they look at this through the lens of because the cops are the enforcement wing of the state, which is a very valid way to look at police officers. But when I look at these situations, I also imagine in a libertarian world where we have basically privatized law, privatized police forces, and let's imagine those forces, as much as we can imagine that hypothetical situation, those forces were in this particular situation. How would I expect them to act in that situation? At that point, I think I would expect them to act exactly the way that these cops did in terms of fearing for their life. Once someone has ignored your orders and now they're reaching into a car. Now, it could be that the guy who had absolutely nothing on him, no weapon or anything. And I don't think I'm justifying shooting the man in the back 7 times point blank. But it does change the situation from just he's not complying to now we're in a very dangerous situation where it looks like he's reaching into his car for something. Now, I had some responses to this. And here's basically my takeaway from this, okay? The 7 rounds that went point blank into this man's back could have been avoided if 2 things had happened. 1, if the 4 cops had actually restrained the guy when they had the chance to restrain the guy. I mean, all 4 of them right next to the guy. Seems to me they could have grabbed him, tackled him, slammed him. Anybody talking about how, Drew, wouldn't it be bad optics if they kicked him or punched him or tackled him? Really, is that worse optics than shooting him 7 times in the back? Like, realistically, which is the worst optics here? Now, obviously, it is very easy to look at these things and critique them from the safety of your living room when you're watching it on your phone or on your laptop or something like that. It's obviously different to have a very calm Monday morning quarterbacking takeaway on these things. Now, I'm not unsympathetic to the fact that that is a very dangerous job. My thing is, at the end of the day, when I look at these situations, the man didn't comply with the orders. The cops acted that way. Now, I've seen way worse situations where the cops clearly overreacted. My takeaway from this is, who do I expect a higher standard from? Do I expect a higher standard from random citizens who are untrained in going about their day, even if they are idiots like this guy was for just ignoring the cops? And there's a whole other thing we're going to have to get into here where, you know, this whole thing of like, well, they're fearing for their lives too. Like, I don't see that on that man. I see that on that man where he's just like, nah, I'm just not going to deal with the cops right now. It's like, well, dude, it doesn't work that way. Okay, you don't just get to decide. That's the whole point of enforcement. You don't just get to decide, you know what? I'm not going to deal with the cops right now. I'm just not having it. It just doesn't work that way. It can't work that way as long as you have enforcement wings of the law. It can't be subjective to whether or not you feel like dealing with it. If they tell you to stop, I mean, you have to stop. You have to stop. You really do. That's law enforcement. That's how that works. But there's a takeaway between a dumb civilian and 4 trained officers who are tasked with protecting and serving the public in the sense that, you know, you buy that. But who are we supposed to expect more of? Now, obviously, compliance could have avoided this entire situation. If the man would have stopped, talked to the cops, it would have been a completely different situation than if they had shot him. You know, if there really was a hands up, don't shoot situation, that's obviously just murder. It's just straight up murder. Now, this guy actually has not died, last that I've heard. I'm sure he's severely fucked up. He had 3 of his kids in the car. Obviously, they're going to be traumatized because I believe it was 3, 5, and 8-year-old. So obviously, the older ones at least are going to carry this around with them the time Dad got shot. But the one point of this that it does have to be mentioned, the guy did not comply. Now, compliance does not mean that cops just get to shoot you. But the cops didn't shoot him just for non-compliance. See, there's a lot of gray area in these situations where they're not just straight up, oh wow, the cops were just completely egregious and outrageous in how they responded to this, and the guy did nothing wrong. There's a lot of variables that you have to take into account here. But wait, there's more. Of course, as a result of this, now mobs are burning down Wisconsin in protest, which is, to relate this back to the election, it's just horrible optics for Democrats who have been literally kneeling for these BLM mobs. And every riot like this stands to help Donald Trump's reelection. the polling is just going to get better and better the more of these pissed off mobs start destroying car dealerships and just burning random places down. Like, this isn't about justice. This isn't about, legitimate protest. This is about people just being pissed off and destroying things. The optics on that are so fucking bad for the majority, your average voter that looks at this thinks, my God, this shit needs to be shut down. Like, unless you're like really far off on some wing somewhere, especially if you're far off on the left, you might look at that and just be like, no, it's really not that bad. But no, it's awful. And the average American sees that and they're like, wow, but this actually gains sympathy for the fucking cops rolling in and squashing that kind of shit. Because one thing people don't like knowing that, one, they're not going to be able to defend themselves because the law is retarded about self-defense in most situations. In most of these cities, which are, again, Democrat ran, most of the self-defense rules are fucking retarded. If you can even own a gun in public, you're very, very limited on how you can use it. Do you have to fucking run away 30 feet before you're allowed to defend yourself? Some of these places have retarded laws about even in your house. You have to at least try to escape your house while some strangers in there ransacking it or trying to kill your family or something. These places have ridiculous laws. But then on top of self-defense, you have to worry about what's going to happen to your place of business or your home, all your possessions, everything that you've worked for, your entire livelihood can be absolutely destroyed. And then people are just going to go on the news and spout off about how, well, you got insurance, right? Because I know the people that think, because these businesses have insurance, that, well, it's not really so bad, right? Like, I personally know people who hold those opinions, and it's beyond retarded and aggravating. You're literally pushing people to the extremes when you say stupid shit like, well, you got insurance. Yeah, because I guarantee you, these motherfuckers that say that, if their car got stolen, what? Well, maybe the guy just needed the car. You got insurance, don't you? Somebody comes to your house and burns your fucking house down. You have homeowners insurance, don't you? Right? What about the people that work at these places? What about the people that work at that car dealership? Let's say insurance does reimburse them for all those fucking cars. How long does that take? And how do the employees make money in the meantime? Like, what the fuck are you people talking about? Dude, that is becoming like a mainstream take. And it's so goddamn ridiculous. So people are in these situations where they can't defend themselves and they can't defend their property. They can't defend their livelihoods from pissed off mobs. And this is another thing, and we'll close on this. This will be the end of the podcast here after this point. We're being told that in-person voting is unacceptable because of the pandemic. But yet again, how many times in the last 4 months have we seen this? People are allowed to protest en masse by the tens of thousands over these issues with the blessing of the same people that tell you it's too dangerous to vote in person. Dude, if that's not just authoritarian control and fucking media brainwashing, I don't know what else to call that. I mean, you're a fucking selfish asshole if you want to be able to go back to work and earn a living, or you want to go to a salon and get your fucking hair cut. You want to go to a restaurant and eat some food, and all parties involved are willing. But you're a selfish piece of shit for doing that. But yet you can go out and do this. You can go out and lock arms and celebrate, Gay Pride in Chicago was another big rally they had at the end of July, or the end of June. There's thousands of people locked arms in Chicago, a major American city. And they're all protesting. Granted, they weren't burning stuff down, but the whole point is it's too dangerous to vote in person. We can't figure out a way to social distance or have people wear masks or whatever the fuck to go to a voting booth. But we can have this en masse with the blessing of the people in power.